It's always good to be here every Wednesday afternoon. You're welcome to another edition of the program Flipside. My name is Daisy Obaisiamo. So when you go around the streets of Benin City, you would notice that we have a lot of children begging. We have those that are hawking. We have those that are forcefully doing menial jobs for you, and they ask you to pay for it, like those ones washing the window of your cars. You know, you're just in the traffic, and the next thing you see them with their thumbs and water, and when they're done, they expect you to give them something. Whether they wash or they don't wash self, you just want to support, you help them. Now, Nigeria seems to have all of these children out of school. We have some of them who are not just only out of school, but they are also homeless. We have about 13.5 million children that are out of school in this country, according to the latest statistics by UNICEF. The problem is not the fact that we have that much number. It's the fact that we have the highest number in the world. Nigeria seems to be topping the list of all the negatives. Maybe they are exaggerating a little bit. Or if you also check the number of children that are out of school or begging, you will notice that many of them also are what many of us here call the Almajiri children. But what is Almajiri to start with? Are they really Almajiri children, or there's something underneath all of this? Today on Flipside, we will be talking about out of school children, the Almajiri phenomenon. You know, Flipside, we bring stories that make the news, and we give you the other side of it. We give you all the information we can gather concerning that story. But we'll check this news on street beggars and how they get to the streets and some of the things they do to live. And when we finish from that report, we'll come back to the studio. You will meet my special guest that will be talking about out of school children, Almajiri phenomenon, with me. So let's quickly check this report by Ameze Obaisiabo.
You carry me to America?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes. Thank you. God bless you.
It is no longer news that some parts of Benin City have been taken over by street beggars who comprise mostly of young children who are either begging or forcefully doing menial jobs like cleaning vehicle windscreens to get money from motorists. However, worrisome is the fact that some residents said some of these beggars have started showing violent tendencies as they either attempt to destroy property of people who refuse to grant their request.
Not only those small children destroying the motor parts and washing the windscreen, but if you look out now, you see so many youths on the streets as if they are lunatics.
For some residents, it seems right to give the beggars food or money as a way of being charitable to the less privileged.
When you are okay in life, if your neighbor is not okay, if you have the food, you have to give them so that they can be okay like you. So I want to use this medium to beg the government. They should not abandon them like this. They should do something. Think about them. They are human.
I grew up in a society. I eat with them. I dine with them. We have Seriki of the king, Seriki the king of the Hausas, then Seriki the blind. So Seriki the blind controls this one. They stay at number 53 Mission Road there, close to Holy Cross Cathedral.
To the children, begging is their only source of livelihood as they have no parents to take care of them.
I dey beg money.
You beg money. If you get money now, why is that do?
Bad.
Where your papa, where your mama?
Ring road. Yes.
Did they beg for that side?
Yes.
Give me money.
And they give you where?
20 naira, 15 naira, 100 naira, 1,000 naira.
Apart from being a source of harassment to motorists and some pedestrians that they are caused on the street, the presence of these children on the street is actually very dangerous to them because they're also faced with the risk of being knocked down by oncoming vehicles.
According to a legal practitioner, children who are left alone in advanced nations to fend for themselves are picked up and taken care of by the government.
The government should be all out, taking charge of the street, reading these people out of the street and taking them into government confinement.
On plans by Edo State government to address the situation, sources close to the office of the Commissioner for Women Affairs assured that the Commissioner, Barrister Maria Deko, will comment at a later date. Ameze Obaisiagbon reporting.
All right, so that was the report by Aneza. Flip side, the other side of the news. I have two guests in the house and you're going to meet them. They're not new to television, so I'm sure at some point you've seen them, maybe not in the program, maybe in the news, or trust me, they are not new people. I have the Chief Imam of Benin Central Mosque. I have with me here Alhaji Abdul Fatai in Nabulili. It's such a delight to have you on Flipside today, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and I have someone you've seen a lot in the program Message of Islam. I have here Alhaji Nuruddin Esunoje, Esquire.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome
Good
to
afternoon,
the
viewers.
program. All right, so we're talking about out of school children. It's not only Muslims that are out of school children, it is true. But from the information we're getting, the bulk of the out of school children we have are from the northern parts of the country. And most of these people practice Islam. And the form of education they claim to be having is the Almajiri education. So it's not like they're out of school, they just prefer to take another kind of education. But let's start with the word Almajiri. What exactly does it mean? How did it come about, this system of education that some people practice that takes them away from Western education? I'll start with you, the Chief Imam, sir.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I was watching the background just and I started laughing. I was discussing with my brother that this is a big disgrace on the Muslims. It's very embarrassing, not only to the people of Edo State, but to the generality of Muslims. And I think there's need for us to do something very drastic. Well, the word Almajiri is derived from the word Almajirun, which simply means emigrants.
Okay.
To migrate, maybe because there is a conflict in your area, because during the time of the Prophet, those who migrated with the Prophet because of the problem they were having in Mecca to Medina were known as the emigrants, those who migrated, Muhajirin. But the word is derived from that word, which simply means somebody or a group of people who want to acquire knowledge. They can decide to migrate to any part of the world to acquire this knowledge and come back to the environment to impart this knowledge on the people. Well, we look at the origin of this Almajiri system of education, date back to more than 400 years.
Wow.
That was during the time of 1580 to about 1617. This king of Kane Bono Empire, the old Kane Bono Empire, which is made up of Bono, Yobe, some part of Chad and Niger. That is Ma Idris Aloma. He was a lover of education. He traveled very far, went to different parts of the world, to the Ottoman Empire, the Babylonian Empire. He went to Morocco, Sudan, Egypt, to study their ways, their behavioral pattern, the educational system. And he was very impressed. He came down to Kane Bono Empire and decided to replicate that system for his people, for the benefit of his own people. So he established several schools and he gave scholarship to his indigenes to go and study in different parts of the world. And when they came back, he appointed them as teachers and instructors who will monitor the affairs of the school and report back to him on daily basis. So with the help of the parents and the money realized from taxation, they were able to maintain the schools and pay the teachers' salaries. So it was a well-structured system of education, which was very beneficial to those people. You know, Islam came to Nigeria through the Kane Bono Empire in the 5th century.
Yeah.
And so they were very advanced in education. That is where those other part of the north copied from, the Sokolo Caliphate and other part of the northern part of the country. And so things were moving on well. But because of this slave trade, and then you have the issue of in 1914 or thereabout, 1904 thereabout, when the British came with their Wayo evangelization and colonialism, the first thing they did was to destroy the educational system they met on ground. They abolished the Almajiri system. And in prison, most of the traditional rulers there, those who were very antagonistic, they expelled them, they sent them on exile, some were even killed. So at the end of it all, there was no proper coordination again. Teachers were not paid. Students were in a state of disarray. They had to struggle to survive. And what do you expect the teachers to do, for example? We were getting salaries on a daily basis before. And so they have to decide to create their own, what we call a local school, now called the Makarata, where they teach, because at that time they speak Arabic and Kanuri language. There was nothing like English at that time. So before the Nazareth started struggling, taking these students, in the numbers with different stations and in locations. In the morning they come to read. After they have read, the teachers have to be taken care of. So those students have to go out somewhere along the line, because there was no proper coordination again. Most of them, their powers have been rendered useless. They were no longer effective again because of this indirect rule system, colonial rules. And so the students have to go out there to go and beg. And some of them go to the farm, some go and sell. At the end of it all, they come back again and bring something for the teachers. So in the evening again, they also come and read. That was the system, that was the routine. We got our independence, then the local government and the state government took over. But it was not effective enough. The population of the country was growing in large numbers, and because most of these Almajiri students, they are the students of the poorest of the poor. The privileged ones has the opportunity of sending their children overseas to go and study. So these children, they have to survive. So this was part of the issue, the origin of the problem of these Almajiri school. Almajiri school is not bad at all. It was a bad system implemented by, particularly in the Kanebonu Empire, by Ma Idris Aluma, later by Ma Ali Ganji, and the rest of them. So it was going on fine. It was the colonial system, and later our leaders who do not have the foresight, they know the importance of education, because they traveled wide, they carried their children overseas to go, and they neglect these poor men's children who are more in numbers. And so they have to survive. These were part of the problems we have been having. And so what is happening in those days is a cartel who are shipping them in. So it is the responsibility of government to do something about it. Okay. Some of them are born here. There was a particular case in which I really witnessed. I wanted to assist the young girl. She was about 13. So I used to drive along Saple Road. She used to beg along at this junction there. And particularly I called her. I said, what are you doing? The sun was shining heavily, scolding her there. She was sweating. And I called her. I said, come. What are you doing? This one cannot help you. How much are you going to get here now? Let me come. Let me help you. He said, okay. I gave her some money. I said, next day, which was on Friday, when I'm going to the mosque, just wait for me. I will pick you up. I will then I go and see your parents. I said, by the way, where's your father? He said his father is in Niger. Okay. On Friday, when I was coming back, I looked for this girl. I didn't see her again. I think maybe she must have married now. So the part of this problem are the parents too. It is not begging is not allowed in Islam. Secondly, you don't have to bring children that you cannot take care of to this world. So many of them have these children in numbers. There's they're not financially buoyant to take care of them. And so in order for them to survive, they have to move around the street and start begging. It's not an excuse, but the government has to do a lot
to help.
Alhaji
Nuruddin, the Almajiri schools, do they teach mathematics, English, science, or it's just Islamic knowledge that's acquired there?
Well, if you followed my brother's trend, we may have issues with such stereotyping. What do we mean by an Almajiri school? What are we talking about? Islam prides itself on scholarship. That's the wheel on which it runs. In copious passages of the Quran, Allah would say, are they equal? Do they exist in parity? Those who know and those who do not know. So it will mean that even in Islam, education is critical. It is a desideratum, so to speak, that dynamizes the critical mass that precipitates the manumission of man or humanity from darkness and penury in all its ramifications. So when you talk about mass, algebra, for example, zero, the figure zero is to mathematics, and of course mass is to science, what the air you and I breathe is to us. Zero is central. It is from the Muslim world, and is a critical thing. When you talk about the core sciences, the Muslims had blazed a trail there at a time when it was considered a taboo, an anathema, for one to be found with any written material, so to speak, in Europe, and what you today refer to as the present developed world. There were thousands of public, we're not talking about private libraries now, in Andalusia, when Islam had sway. Andalusia then was the capital of what you refer to today as the modern Spain. And so Islam does not believe in the compartmentalization, so to speak, of learning, except that every learning must be spiritualized by a consciousness that translates it into an imperative of action. Like the point he had validly made, because of the import, the significance that is placed on learning in Islam, people had to leave the comfort of their home. Idris Aloma was comfortable wherever it was he was, presiding over the vast Kano Bonu Empire. Now, in spite of that comfort, he appreciated how insignificant he was if he did not tower an intellectual colossal above those who were supposedly his subject. And on the basis of that, leaving the comfort of his home, he went out in search of knowledge. And so what you have found today, which unfortunately is pejoratively referred to as Islamic kind of education, there is nothing that is Western about the so-called Western education. Because when the house of wisdom was built by the caliph in Baghdad, the period that was referred to, euphemistically referred to as the period of Renaissance or the Dark Ages, was a period in Europe when ignorance had sway, when an average man in Europe was held under the vice of obscurantism, innovating ignorance, so to speak. So what you found then was that the Muslim world prided itself on the old issue of scholarship. What we have found, when the colonial masters came, they were enamored of the arrangements of what was in either Kano Bonu Empire or the Sokoto Caliphate. What were they asking? If we were to torpedo this system, there must be a dislocation of the people from the source of their significance, which was the knowledge. And so we'll render this either difficult to acquire or render it so useless in a way that they would no longer find the time or the pleasure feeling of titillation that was derivable from the pursuit of knowledge. Difficult as may seem. Do not again forget that even the Prophet had said, and I'm sure that was what people have copied from, that knowledge, the totality of it, without it being compartmentalized, was the lost property of the Muslim, male or female. And wherever he finds it, let him pick it. And he said, the search for knowledge, even if it were to take you as far as China, China was the farthest example he could give. So in this context, China will serve as a condensed metaphor, as it were, for whatever it is that is associated with the issue of distance and difficulty, for as long as it is for the purpose of acquiring knowledge. And so Muslims raided in all of this, and were not bothered in the world of science, whether it is in medicine, Ibn Faris, and all of those, Al-Ghazali, who were wizards in mathematics. An average Muslim that you found then was an encyclopedia of knowledge. Knowledge, whether it was in mathematics, whether it was in astronomy, whether it was in geology, just name it. They were home and dry there. They were a walking library each time you confronted anyone. So it was not a question of I was good in the sciences, I was not good in calculation, I was not good in this. That was basically what it was. Do not again forget that the Quran, knowledge, which people have narrowed the whole issue of Almajiri education to, the Quran is, so to speak, a synopsis of the totality of knowledge. The Quran, for example, tells us that there are two oceans that run into each other, but that there is a veil that separates the water from actually having physical contact, even to the bare eye it does. Which of course explains why the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean run into each other. One is warm and perpetually warm, the other is cold, maintaining its temperature, justifying that. Centuries before in botany, they were beginning to talk about sexes in plants. The Quran had already said in the 36th chapter of the Quran that there were sexes in plants, the females and the whatever. It has talked about the birds flying and not flipping their wings, and they are sustained before you came to realize the force of thermodynamics and that kind of stuff. So you find out that what these fellows get, including the knowledge you are talking about, they have what they call the study of Hisab, which is calculation or mathematics. They study astronomy, even in the course of doing all of those things. So an average student in the Almajiri system, as it then was before they came and began to balkanize it, and it ultimately experienced decimation, was a moving encyclopedia of knowledge in all its ramifications. So it's not just the capacity to be able to read the Quran, interpret what the Quran says. Of course, it's written in the finest of language, but that language gives you access to the understanding of all other things that the Quran has challenged man to.
Okay, so it's clear now. The Almajiri might not have, the Almajiri system of education might not have these subjects in compartments, maths, English, science.
No, sorry, before you go to the next question, let me just, in addition to what I said now, I think there's certain things we should understand about these knowledge and subjects. Whatever we are learning in English in Nigeria today is the same thing they are learning in Arabic. In the Arabic world, it's the same thing they are also learning in the French world, where they speak in the Spanish world, in the Russian world. You understand what I'm saying? It's not different. So when you talk about people begin to talk about Western, there's something like Western education is education. Education is education. For example, physics, chemistry, biology is also studied as we are studying in English here in Nigeria. It is studied in Saudi Arabia or that part of the world where they speak Arabic. They just have the way you have different languages, so they translate this into their own languages. So it's not different.
Okay. Now, I was trying to do a little bit of research. Maybe I didn't do it in depth enough, but I realized that the Almajiri system of education is not really popular in seemingly big Islamic nations beyond our shores. It's not as popular as it is here. So I'm wondering, does it really benefit us socio-economically? Because some people are calling for its outright scrap. Let's just scrap it, because whatever the reason might have been why it was firmed, people are getting it wrong now. So do you think there's any benefit of sustaining the Almajiri system of education, considering what we see now?
I think what we have to do in Nigeria here, particularly in the north, is that there should be improvement on the system. That is how education started in other part of the world. So they began to improve on it. The facilities were there. When you have the biology, the chemistry, the physics lab, everything were well equipped. All the equipments were there. There was improvement. The teachers were well paid. It's only in Nigeria we look at teachers as if they are nothing. We have the resources to pay the teachers, empower them, let them go for more training. Then also we have the practitioners, educational practitioners, for example, the government, the local government, the state government, They all have roles to play. In those days, as I said before, it was the traditional rulers who were in charge. Now, the government, the local government, the state government, they have to invest more. If Chief Obafemi Awolowo in the western region, without oil, was able to declare free education in that region with only cocoa, what stops for now that we have a lot of resources? Let us declare free education for the primary, the secondary. Then we can leave the university for those who have the means. Then you will see that there is a lot of improvement. Now, secondly, there must be a way out. The world is moving technologically, and we have to move with that trend. The system of saying that people should go to Mankarata without going to study other type of educational field is not. It cannot go well. There will be no progress. So we have to join everything together. In the Arab board, for example, both the Islamic and the other conventional subjects are being taught at the same time in the same school. So you don't need to compartmentalize everything together and say this one should be for only Quranic, while the other one should be for other subject. No, it doesn't work like that. Combine everything together. Employ the necessary qualified teachers. Encourage them. Pay them with good salary. There will be a lot of improvement. Then secondly, too, there is need for the elites to understand certain things in this country. Because for every rich man's where the poor has a share. You see, it's not the government alone. The Dangotes, they are all trying. But there are still a lot of persons there. Those the government give oil way to, they should dedicate some part of their revenue for education. So that these children will leave the street. For example, in the last administration in Edo State, we met the government. We told them that begging is not allowed in Islam. What they should do, remove these children, monitor them, the cartel that is bringing them in, then you'll be able to track them down. Then secondly, those parents, most of these children who are begging now, their parents are sitting down somewhere watching them. So what you do, if you like, can arrest those children, arrest them, then the parents will come. Then you now hold the parents responsible. If they are not ready to allow those children to go to school, you must force them. There's an extent you can go to. There should be some measure of enforcement so that there can be sanity in the system. Going to the street, begin to consider yourself a nuisance, they not go well with our system at all. It's giving us a very bad name. So government has a role to play by take them out of the streets, if necessary by force.
Okay, you mentioned something about primary education free, secondary free. I know primary education in most parts of Nigeria is actually free already. And even President Muhammadu Buhari tried to introduce the school feeding program to even encourage more children to stay in school. They don't do that in Benin City, but they do it in some northern states to keep the children in school. It doesn't seem to be, we don't seem to feel the result or the impact of that program. Well, I want to ask a question. Nigeria's population is really, really huge for what we have on the ground. If we continue reproducing children the way we do, in another 50 years, maybe we'll start eating each other. Okay? Amongst the population, we'll talk about the population, we have more children in the northern part of Nigeria. That could also be one of the reasons why we have more of them, a higher number of out-of-school children. What does Islam say about reproducing kids? I know in Christianity, there's no number that you stop when you've had 4 or when you've had 5, but a man who cannot take care of his own is worse than an infidel. It's very clear, and many Christians hold on to that. So we seem to have more Muslims having more children, more northern people having more children. So does Islam permit it? I'm sorry, before you answer that question, I want to quickly say something. I met a woman, she's from Niger, she's not Nigerian. The husband was the security megad, that's what we call it, megad of the house, of my uncle's house. So we got talking. She had a 6th child, 1 room. And then I was trying to engage her, like, why do you keep popping out babies? Moreover, you're in 1 room. You think this children might be sleeping at night. There are a lot of things they will see you and your husband do. You can't have this number of children in 1 room. And you can't even take care of them like that. I said, God will take care of the children for her. And I'm like, why don't you do family planning? And she said, Islam forbids family planning. Maybe she spoke out of ignorance, but I want to get clarity on this.
Well, you see, the problem is that we leave the fundamentals and discuss the incidentals, and that's where the problem is. When you asked my brother a question, you said, does this Almajiri system of education not constitute a nuisance to the point that will scrape? I would have expected you to follow that up by saying, which education do you know that is not a problem in this country at least? Just tell me of one education. Is this the so-called Western education? You say there is free primary education. Yes, free, but absolutely free of what it ought to represent. No education. If you had education, what does it do for you? It tames, domesticates proclivities that are negative. It addresses the propensity for things that are sublunary. It doesn't do that with us. Who are those who peculate? Do we have problems in this country because we are overpopulated? Is that honestly the problem that we have? Or that resources without integrity coagulate in the hands of insignificant few? We are here today where you have found persons who took contracts running into billions that would have transformed the lives of people. They never visited the site. And so we all are paying a price. We all are paying a price. So the woman you said has X number of children, regaling in fatalism that yes, Allah would provide. Have you bothered to ask, why does the husband only find consolation in sexual activity? Because if he is into things that are creative and productive, it eats into the time that it will have to copulate with the wife that may or may not result in the number of children that they have. So I think first and foremost, it is the issue that you have enormous resources. There is the felonious juxtaposition of intimidating opulence and enervating poverty. And this you can't explain. In Islam, for example, if Dangote has all of the resources he has, and assuming that it was resources characterized by integrity, is under an obligation. If the resources is not productive, productive will mean that it does not have it kept somewhere. Productive will mean that it is regenerating itself. It will mean that persons will be engaged. And all of those persons who are engaged will be involved in economic activities that will eat into their time, that will make them become much more responsible in the way they conduct their affairs without necessarily being fatalistic. But here we are. That isn't obviously the case. And so you have what you have referred to as the Almajiri system. I will tell you, this same system, when it was most effective, had produced professors in medicine, produced professors in engineering, produced them. And in the northern part where you have spoken about, that is a region where you deal with persons who may be governor of a particular state in the north, but their official office is in Abuja. So they do not even know what happens. Once the resources is gotten, they are there. They do not relate with people as their forebearer, the likes of Sir Ahmadu Bello and Tafawa Balewa, related with whatever person. So the fact, if there is the speculation of what would have banished poverty in society, people would perpetually navigate the even ocean of impecuniosity, if not outright penury. And I think this is what is confronting us. And until and unless we are able to deal with this situation and deal with it frontally, we will continue to have problems. The children you say are out of school children, even under the so-called Almajiri, whatever, are they engaged in anything? They are not. Those you find on the street in Benin who are either begging for alms or washing your car for you, what form of education are they involved in? And you know why government is not interested in what all of those individuals are doing or not doing? even when they are conscious of the fact that they represent a time bomb that gets detonated at a time they would have themselves even be sterile, too sterile to superintend factors that may precipitate such detonation. But for the now, they are not bothered for as long as it is good business for them. So if you say schools, take Edo State, for example, where we are. To the best of my knowledge, I stand to be corrected. The last public school that was built in Edo State by government was built under Ambrose Ali. Ambrose Ali was in the government that ceased to be in 1983. How many years ago? Are we still the number we are? Go to our schools. You don't find teachers there. The bulk of those that you even find a teacher are people who are themselves desirous of knowledge, who ought to be taught because they are Olu. So what do they communicate? And that basically is the problem. When we have emirs who were responsible, who didn't pride themselves in the fact that I ride the biggest car in the country, they understood the significance of knowledge. And so they funded it from resources that came from the domain over which they exercise, because they were interested in the quality of those who were their subjects. They were not just looking for those who will say who were completely barren of any value. And so you had persons who draped knowledge in the costume of honor and dignity. That is missing under the present dispensation. Who funds education? Whether it is at the local government level, whether it's at the state level, whether it's... Forget all of the rhetorics. Who funds education? What is the funding that goes to education? What does an average teacher get? And how many of those who are teachers are individuals who have connected to their inner, the inner landscape of their lives? And if a teacher is unable to connect to the inner landscape of its life, how does he or she connect to the subject he's supposed to teach? And how does he or she connect to the students he was supposed to teach? Because every teacher projects itself, and you cannot fake that. It is what you are that you will give. And so these are the fundamental issues we'll be discussing. It's not whether the woman was right or he was not wrong, because God in himself, in his own infinite whatever wisdom, has the mechanism. If you say the child is for that woman who brought the child to the world, why would you charge her for murder if she were to kill the child, or if she were to deal with the child in a way that you say he or she ought not to have dealt with that child? So it will mean that there is a collective ownership. But the resources for the management of all of this affair are in the hands of those who were supposed to be stewards, helping to superintend its judicial use.
Okay. All right. In as much as I've heard a lot of what, I'm still going to go back to that question, because you did not answer the question.
The question is simple.
Okay.
That no soul God has brought into this world that was not accompanied with what would take care of that soul. But you and I may serve as a stumbling block.
So in other words, you can have as many children as you want.
As,
the Lord
no,
will
it's
take
not
care
as
of
you
it.
want, as God wills. Nobody gets as he wants.
Okay.
Because in Islam, when a man copulates with his wife, the intendment, in addition to whatever pleasure he gets, is that, oh, may this be blessed. And if he is blessed with an offspring, you take care. All of those you find, you say, are unable to take care of their children. They are unable to do so not just because of the issue of number. It is because ab initio they are irresponsible. Those with one who are unable to take care of one, I mean those with 10 who couldn't take care of 10, even with one they will not be able to do so.
Interesting.
Sorry, Mara. I think there's need for us to clear this issue.
Exactly.
You don't bring children to this world that you cannot take care of. It's a sin, because you are going to account to God. The children you are brought to this world, whether it's one, whether it's 50, if you cannot take care of them, you are going to give account to God. It's a trust on you. So let us, one, arrange our homes.
Okay. Because I was about asking.
When he says it's a trust, the issue of ability is relative. You can be Dangote today. Tomorrow you are Nuruddin. Supposing they have come. So you do not factor God. That is why we said in all of this, there is the mutuality of dependence of elements. The state must play its role. Everybody playing its role. Everybody playing its role. If you willfully, and every man in Islam, for example, whether your wife earns 10 billion a month, is immaterial. You have a duty to maintain her. But where you genuinely do not have, and she brings her own, it's no longer a sin on you for you to partake in what she brings. So the question of whatever, in Islam, let me tell you now, this is an authentic tradition of the Prophet, which I expect that he appreciates. Some persons had gone to the Prophet fearing the issue of the number of children. And they said, we practice what is called azlu. Azlu is withdrawal. The man copulates with the wife. At the point of ejaculation, he withdraws so that the semen does not go there. The Prophet did not respond to the first person who raised the issue. A second person raised the issue. And the Prophet said, do whatever you will. The child that God had willed will come to this world will come. When the third, whose faith was much stronger of the other two had asked, he said, that is the secret killing of your children that the Quran spoke about. And so, what is the issue of what I can control? I don't know what I can. Because one child can give me hell. So you could have a child who has health challenge that will require millions to maintain. And so, even if you were the group general manager of NMPC, it means you have a hell in your hand.
Okay,
if you have a child who suffered autism and all that kind of stuff.
No, I agree with everything you are saying.
He made a statement to me one time, someone, and said, the Lord is in charge of everything. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't plan. Your life can be taken tomorrow, so because you know you don't know how to control your life, will you now just sit down there and say, whatever life throws at me, I take? You still will make plans.
Yes,
regardless, we know that God is in charge. Yeah. So, how many children do you have?
Me?
Yes.
How do you know that I will not keep having them? How do you know I will not keep having them?
We pray that God should bless you.
Yes, we know. But how many has God blessed you with?
I have 6 of them. I'm still counting.
Oh my God.
you know, let me tell you, see, Nigeria, sometimes I used to describe Nigeria as a very dubious society. See, so many things are wrong with our system.
It is.
Some few years ago, we were in Saudi Arabia, so we were just discussing, one Arab man came in, he was asking us, how many children do you have? How many wives do you have? He said it's good for you to have 4 wives. Each of them will have for 4 children. That is 20.
So that's 16.
Okay, that is 16. I beg your pardon. Then we now said, what about, we started questioning him. He now told us that in their own country there, government plays a big role in making sure that the stabilization of society, in the sense that when you have children, government pays you some allowances. The number of children, before they grow up. When they are old, they pay some allowances. If you want to go to school, in any part of the world, government will give you scholarship. If you want to have a house, they give you loan. They'll be taking you the money, subtracting the money from your salary. If you want to have a car, they also give you loan too. You understand? So just compare such a society to Nigeria now, for example.
But I feel
if they
keep having 16 children per man continuously,
it's not
the resources will not increase.
Let me tell you, it's not every man
that will be blessed with 16.
The issue is not even the challenge of resources.
It's not the corruption.
It's our character.
It's corruption.
It's the character. And the man who goes to his wife every night, that is the only place he gets pleasure. Because he's a frustrated human being. He takes the frustration out on the woman. So if you engage that man more positively, he may not even have the time. If a man sits down now, he has a project, whatever, how will he be thinking about it? The woman just knows that she has to wait for as long as that project lasts. But when he has nothing doing.
I give you an example about Awolowo, with coconut, with cocoa. He was able to establish free education in that region. Today, the Yorubas are the most intelligent people in this country because he had the foresight. He formulated policies and programs that will better the people's life. So, in the present day, whether in the north or the south, what are they doing? Yesterday, Buhari said the money that they have been collecting for constituency project running to 1 trillion. There's nothing to show for it. Nothing to show for it.
Okay.
So where do we go from there?
I will just ask 2 more questions before we leave the studio today. In China, we know Asia has the highest population. For real, they have people. And in a bid to curb their population, sometime in several years past, there was a ban. You can't have more than 1 child. And in recent years, about 2-3 years back, they've increased it to you can have 2. And in Saudi Arabia, I'm wondering how the Muslims in China are doing it so that they don't have more than 2 right now, and yet not making committing a sin against their religion. We have Muslims in Asia. Then I also there's something I was going to even say about the population. So because we did population in Nigeria. Is it a curse or a blessing? The day we did World Population Day, and the people I brought here said we need to put a ban on the number of children we're having, just the way China did, so that we can put things in place, so that we can control some things. The poor people have more children, and they cannot take care of the children. If government keeps taking care of these children for them, is it not going to be more encouragement for them to pop out more babies? Because the more you have, the more money you get. So how do the Muslims in China, in Asia, control the number of children they have so that they don't offend government and still not offend God?
I think the first thing you should be talking about, the Chinese government, the economic policies, how progressive is it? Is it? This is a country, for example, when you are caught, you occupy any position, when you are caught stealing, the first thing is that you will be arrested and tried, and when you are found guilty, it's execution. In Nigeria, yeah, all those who have been caught, what is the result? Is it when you are talking about the issue of childbirth? That to me is personally for me. I know the number of children I want to have. When I have that, I'm okay with that. That should be left for individuals, as far as I'm concerned.
What will happen to the other 3 women?
The other 3 women? No. The issue of polygamy, is not compulsory. I'm coming. Polygamy is part of the issue we are even discussing now. The issue it's not compulsory too.
So you have to practice it.
But it's not compulsory. You have to do it based on your ability and capability.
You have.
We are praying that God should bless us. When God blesses us, then we're ready to help to do more. Okay. But as of now,
that promise.
Yes, as of now, you live based on your ability and capability. So China, don't compare China to Nigeria, because they have passed through several processes. They have leaders who are disciplined. Have you ever seen the Chinese man carry his money to go and bank in another country? You don't see that. They are disciplined. There was a time they closed their borders. They said, let us make do with what we have today. Now, they just close our border for some few months now. People are crying. They are abusing Buhari, this, Buhari, that. So don't compare that. What the issue of numbers of children, if the government has policies and programs, pragmatic policies, progressive policies, dynamic policies, everything will flow. Nigeria is rich. We are not poor. So that should not be an excuse.
Okay.
I'm not saying that people should not control this, but that is not that should be an excuse. Nigeria, God has blessed this country. What we need is leaders who are God-fearing. Let us look at the policies implemented by people like Mahdi Saloma and the rest of them that made Almajiri system to be successful. Does it mean if the British should come here and destroy them, we cannot come back again and bring it back to life?
All right. In conclusion, if we're going to bring back the Almajiri system to the way it used to be, who will be in charge of its funding? Because these kids are going to definitely stop begging, but they still will feed, and the teachers will have to get paid. So who do you think should be in charge, the government or the Muslim body, or just about anybody?
Well, I think if the Muslims are alive to their responsibilities, the institution of zakat is more than enough to address this. It's more than enough. But the issue is that nobody is interested. As it is now, it is good business. Because those fellows you're talking about, they are foot soldiers during election time. And so somebody needs them every 4 years. How come under the military it was not as pronounced as it is now? They are useful, except that their significance or usefulness only manifests itself every 4 years. If we did what we needed to do by way of saying, okay, we agree that there is a problem. That problem, we have seen it manifesting itself in the northeast by way of Boko Haram, because all of these guys were sourced. We must have a syllabus that is understood by all and controlled. Because you can't, for example, give your child. In the days when people traveled, for which Almajiri was a title properly used, was when there was a scarcity of scholars. So today you have people in Borno who can teach people. So why does a man in Borno, because he wants to free himself from the emotional whatever torture, I don't want to see my child, he carries that child and takes the child to Yola, where he never will find that child. And come to the question you asked in respect of China and all that. Islam appreciates that whatever you were compelled to do by forces that were more than you, you are not liable. If somebody brings a gun and says, I should sit here perpetually, I have 2 options. Resist him and I get killed, I experience martyrdom, or I'll just sit down. If sitting here violates the principles of Islam, I will be exculpable because I was compelled to do so.
It. Okay, so Chief Imam,
no, lastly, let me tell you this, let me make this statement. During President Goodluck Jonathan, he built a lot of Almajiri schools. Not only in the north, both here in the, even there was one Almajiri school in
They just built structures.
No. It doesn't matter whether it was built, but there was a good intention, which did a lot of schools were built. Let us start from there now. If necessary, give these children free meal. Let them go to school, encourage them, even beg them to leave the street, so that we can have a better society for us to live in.
All right, I want to say thank you to the 2 of you for coming to Flipside today. The first time I'm having both of you here. I hope I'll bring you here for more topics to talk about. The Almajiri system of education, actually, it's been thwarted to an extent. It isn't the idea that was formed at the initial stage that we're still running with, obviously, at this time. So many things needs to be done. The most important of it all is the fact that these children on the streets are constituting nuisance to even people living in the society where they're found, and also to themselves. They're a danger to themselves. They run around the streets every day. They can be kidnapped. They could be used for rituals, sexually abused, knocked down by vehicles, contacting all kinds of diseases because they live in very unhygienic situations and places. So many things are they're prone to so many negative things. And if we don't do something about them, we'll all suffer it tomorrow. The Almajiri system of education, I'm not one of those calling for it to be scrapped. I'm not also saying it has to be sustained, but I'm one of those people saying that every child is entitled to be cared for and to acquire knowledge as cheaply as possible. I'm Daisy Obaise. I want to thank you so much for being with us on Flipside. I'll be back again next week.